Hey. The previous one was received rather well, so I figured making more such as this one would be a swell idea. Also, like last time, it's advised to tab out and listen to this as you do something else, unless you'd prefer staring at nothing for a while. Anyways, sit back and let me recount how this channel even came to be. Before I ever came to Warframe, I was massively addicted to an obscure RPG known as Continent of the Ninth Seal, or C9 for short. However, much like other free-to-play games that have existed, C9 had the curse of being an incredibly fun game held back by shitty publishers. At this point in time, I would highly encourage you to not play C9, as that game is just dead in the water, being held on only by the ongoing efforts of the publishers to squeeze every possible penny out of C9, namely because of how gold sellers have taken over the game. Thankfully, the developing talent of Pearl Abyss did not go wasted. If Pearl Abyss sounds familiar, that's because Pearl Abyss went on to make Black Desert Online. You might have possibly heard of it, I dunno. After leaving that shitfest, I hopped from game to game, looking for something to fill the void left behind by C9. No matter how hard I tried, I was unable to find anything I could stick to. I even tried to purposefully get drowned in shit to do by playing Guild Wars 2 and even World of Warcraft, but they couldn't seem to scratch the figurative itch that C9 left me. After a while, a friend of mine on Steam told me to give Warframe a try. Not having anything better to do, I took him up on his suggestion and created an account under the name of Rahetalius, the same name I used on my main character from the C9. It's been 3 years since I started my account, and I still have nothing better to do. I started playing Warframe around the time that Nyx Prime Access was around, which was when Mirage was the newest Warframe in the game. This was an era where the top tier shit consisted of Bolter Prime and Cindo Prime, where Excalibur had Super Jump for a third ability, and where we had fusion cores for leveling mods, not endo. Needless to say, those days were its own special kind of cancer, but it was a kind of cancer that's nostalgic. At first glance, Warframe didn't look like anything special to me. Sure, the theme of playing as a space ninja with space magic powers was fun, but otherwise the game just felt like any old instance-based RPG, albeit with a very good theme. Even so, I pressed on. After progressing through the star chart and joining a clan like any other new player, the ability of being able to switch between different Warframes, or classes, as I referred to it at the time, was first introduced to me when I acquired my first Prime set, that being Frost Prime. I was so used to having to switch between different accounts or different characters that realizing that I could play something else besides Excalibur with a few button presses was odd to me at the time. Wanting to play something that I would use for hours on end without tiring, I browsed through the in-game market, looking for any Warframe that stood out to me. My second surprise came from noticing the lack of loot boxes or any form of gambling system in the market. C9 was especially guilty of this, where loot boxes would be shoved in the player's face, with the promise of potentially being rewarded with a good piece of equipment or what have you. I was a tad bit shocked to see that I could buy what I wanted directly, rather than fork over a few dollars with the prospect of potentially getting what I wanted. As you can imagine, the first and only Warframe that jumped out to me was Vauban. Maybe it was because I've always played as the engineer whenever possible in any game possible, or maybe it was the simple idea of throwing shit that does the job for you that appealed to me, but regardless, I made it my mission to acquire Vauban. Although I was unsurprised to see platinum as a premium currency exist in the game, I was disappointed to learn that Vauban and only Vauban was locked behind alerts, meaning I would be waiting for a very long time before I'd ever get to play him, unless of course I caved and bought him with platinum. I was surprised again for a third time to learn that platinum could be acquired and used all without paying a single cent, via the sale of prime parts, mods, and other stuff. Upon hearing that, I was floored. I was half expecting to have to bust out my bank account just to be able to get on the same playing field as everyone else in the game. Being able to reach said playing field and accomplish just about anything else without needing my wallet, but rather time and dedication, turned out to be just what I was looking for in an RPG. Fast forward a few weeks later, when I've already acquired and modded out Vauban just how I wanted him to be. Limbo was then the newest Warframe at the time, and upon noticing he was designed as an interdimensional gentlemanly magician, I bought him without hesitation. At the time, I generally played everything in solo mode, unless I required the assistance of a clanmate or a public squad for something I couldn't handle on my own. Because I mostly play alone, I didn't understand that Limbo was perceived by most people as a shitty Warframe to play in a squad or public setting, most noticeably by the Warframe YouTuber scene. During this time, the Warframe YouTuber scene consisted of making builds, reviews, lore videos, and animations or shitposts every once in a while. Warframe shitposts and memes weren't exactly a thing yet, even though Quiet Shy was basically the pioneer of that shit back in the day. Also during this time, the general consensus was that Limbo was the absolute worst frame in the game, having little to nothing of value to offer a team. I agreed to some extent, since old Limbo wasn't exactly an exemplar of magnificent ability design, but I was more confused by how virtually nobody made any attempts to remotely defend or even touch upon the positives of Limbo. Deciding to attempt to spread awareness that Limbo wasn't a total piece of shit, I created this channel and uploaded my first video, that being Petty Perspective, Limbo. To my surprise, it was received rather positively, despite utilizing text-to-speech in a similar manner as the fake AO or Quiet Shy. Upon realizing that I could fill the role of that Warframe YouTuber that talks about shit that nobody else does, I decided to continue doing this. In order to give myself some kind of unique identification, I took up the Vauban train sort of as a mascot until a fan was kind enough to make a Vauban Prime train and give it to me, which I've used to this day to both honor his kindness to me and to honor the release of Vauban Prime. It's been 3 years since I started playing, with many primes having been added, including my long-wanted Vauban Prime, and many things having happened, such as my absences from the game. Even after all that having occurred, I still have nothing better to do. Thanks for listening.